You've been taught your whole life that Persia and Iran are two names for the same thing. Interchangeable. Harmless synonyms. The Persia of your history textbooks and the Iran on your news screen. The same country, just different labels. But in 1935, a single diplomatic decree made that assumption a lie. In one act, one letter sent from Tehran to the embassies of the world, a government erased a name that had stood for over 2,000 years. Not just a name, a civilization's entire global identity. Its prestige, its poetry, its silk roads and empires. All bound up in that single word, Persia. And they killed it, on purpose, deliberately. So the question we have to ask isn't what's in a name. The question is, who benefits when you erase one? Because in 1935, the answer was shocking. And the ideology behind it was one of the most dangerous forces the 20th century had ever seen. This is the story of a linguistic coup, and it changed everything. To understand the shock of 1935, you have to feel what the name Persia actually meant to the world. For Europeans, Persia was a word soaked in mythic weight. It was Cyrus the Great, the king who freed the Jewish captives from Babylon, the ruler Aristotle's pupil wrote about in awe. It was the Achaemenid Empire, the largest the ancient world had ever seen. It was Darius and Xerxes, the adversaries of Athens at Marathon and Thermopylae. It was Rumi's poetry, Omar Khayyam's wine, the Silk Road's greatest crossroads. When Western diplomats, traders, and scholars heard Persia, they heard prestige. They heard antiquity. They heard a civilization that had been refining itself while Europe was still finding its feet. And in 1935, Reza Shah Pahlavi told them to stop using it. The paradox is almost too strange to believe. The name the world used to honor Iran, the name that carried centuries of cultural capital across Europe, Asia, and the Arab world, was the very name the Iranian state chose to destroy. They weren't just renaming a country on a map. They were dismantling the world's mental image of who they were, and replacing it with something rawer, harder, more modern, and far more dangerous. So why would a government voluntarily torch a name worth 2,000 years of prestige? The answer lies in a word buried inside Iran itself. A word that in the 1930s carried enormous, terrifying power. The name Iran derives from Ariana, the old Iranian for land of the Aryans. And in 1935, the word Aryan was not an ancient ethno-linguistic category. It was a political weapon. Europe in the 1930s was intoxicated by racial theory. From the universities of Germany to the salons of Rome, intellectuals and politicians were constructing elaborate mythologies of Aryan racial superiority. A master lineage descended from the ancient Indo-European peoples, distinct from and above all other populations. Reza Shah was watching all of this very carefully. By demanding the world call his country Iran, land of the Aryans, he was making a calculated diplomatic signal. We are not the ancient, the exotic, the oriental. We are your racial cousins. We are Aryan. It was a bid for recognition, for geopolitical sympathy, from the rising powers of fascist Europe, particularly Berlin. The ideology was a live wire, and Iran had just grabbed it with both hands. But the Aryan play was only half the story. The renaming wasn't just aimed outward at European capitals. It was aimed inward, at the mosques, at the clergy, at 1,000 years of Islamic identity that Reza Shah was determined to uproot. Reza Shah was a modernizer in the mold of Ataturk, obsessed with building a secular, centralized, militarily powerful state. And he understood something that reformers often discover. To change a society's future, you must first capture its past. By reaching back before Islam, before the Arab conquests of the 7th century that had reshaped Persian culture, language, and religion, Reza Shah was rewriting which history mattered, not the caliphates, not the imams, not the centuries of Shia identity that had defined Iran for a millennium. Iran as a name evoked Cyrus, Darius, Zoroaster, fire temples, and the Avesta, a pre-Islamic golden age that conveniently bypassed the religious establishment entirely. The name was a scalpel. Persia, soft, poetic, foreign, smelled of the old, decadent, colonially inflected Orient. Iran was hard, ancient, self-determined. The clergy hated it. Which was exactly the point. The decree didn't just rename a country. It fired the opening shot in a culture war between secularism and religion that would simmer for decades.